Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the stars through the large front window. His trading vessel, Liberty's Edge, had just finished delivering supplies to the outer colonies. The journey had taken 3 weeks, but it was good business. Humans were building new settlements everywhere, and they needed food, tools, and medicine. Lisa Grant, his second-in-command, walked up to him with a worried look on her face. She held a message pad in her hands. "Jake, we just got an emergency signal from Earth. Admiral Clark wants to speak with all ship captains right away." Jake frowned. Admiral Henry Clark was the head of human colonial defense. He never called for emergency meetings unless something serious was happening. "Put him through to the main screen," Jake said. The large screen at the front of the bridge lit up. Admiral Clark appeared, looking tired and angry. His gray hair was messy, and his uniform looked like he had been wearing it for days. Behind him, Jake could see other military officers running around with papers and data pads. "Captains," Admiral Clark began, "I have bad news. The Galactic Trade Council has made new demands. They want us to pay huge taxes on everything we produce. They want 80% of all the metal we mine from our planets. They want 70% of all the food we grow. And they want us to give them any new technology we create." Jake felt his stomach drop. The Galactic Trade Council controlled most of the galaxy. They were made up of 3 powerful alien races. The Zeltharians looked like living crystals and controlled most of the mining in space. The Neptari lived in water and owned all the planets with oceans. The Kithra looked like giant insects and controlled the farm worlds. For almost 100 years, humans had been part of the council. They paid normal taxes and followed the rules. In return, they could trade with other species and settle on new planets. But these new demands were crazy. No species could survive giving away that much of what they produced. "Sir," came a voice from another ship captain, "what happens if we refuse?" Admiral Clark's face got darker. "They say they will use force. They have warships positioned near our colonies already." Jake looked at Lisa. Her face was pale. Pete Collins, their engineer, had been listening from his station. He shook his head slowly. Amy Brooks, who handled communications, looked scared. "There's more," Admiral Clark continued. "A council representative is coming to Earth's orbital station. A Zeltharian named Zixthara. Dr. Rachel Ford will try to negotiate with them, but I don't think it will help much." The screen changed to show Earth's main orbital station. It was a huge metal structure that spun slowly in space above the planet. Ships came and went from its many docking ports. Jake had been there many times. It was always busy with traders, diplomats, and travelers from all over the galaxy. Dr. Rachel Ford was Earth's best diplomat. She was smart and calm, and she had solved problems with aliens before. If anyone could fix this situation, it would be her. But Jake had a bad feeling that even she might not be able to help this time. The screen switched back to Admiral Clark. "I want all human ships to stay ready. Don't go too far from friendly space. We might need you soon." The communication ended. The bridge of Liberty's Edge was quiet for a moment. Then Pete spoke up from his engineering station. 80% of everything? That's not taxes, that's robbery. The council species have been getting nervous about us," Lisa said. "Humans have been expanding fast. We've built more colonies in the last 50 years than most species build in 500 years. Amy nodded. "And we keep inventing new things. Better engines, stronger materials, faster computers. Maybe they think we're getting too powerful." Jake walked to his captain's chair and sat down. He had been trading in space for 15 years. He had seen how other species lived under council rule. Most of them were not allowed to expand much. They had to ask permission for everything. Their technology stayed the same for hundreds of years, but humans were different. They explored new worlds, built new cities, and always tried to make things better. Maybe that scared the council leaders. Maybe they wanted to stop humans before they became too strong. "Sir," Amy said, "I'm getting reports from other ships. Captain Alan Hughes on the merchant vessel Star Trader says the council has stopped delivering supplies to some human colonies. Captain Deborah Walsh reports that alien inspectors are demanding to search her cargo." Jake stood up again. This was getting worse by the hour. If the council cut off trade with human worlds, People would start running out of food and medicine. Some colonies were still new and could not produce everything they needed. Lisa, set course for Earth. We need to hear what Dr. Ford learns from this Zixthara. Jake paused and looked out at the stars again. And start thinking about what we'll do if the negotiations fail. As Liberty's Edge turned toward Earth, Jake thought about the choice facing humanity. They could give in to the Council's demands and become economic slaves, or they could fight back against 3 powerful alien empires. Neither option looked good. But Jake knew one thing about humans. They did not like being pushed around, and they were very good at finding ways to win against impossible odds. Maybe the Council was about to learn that lesson the hard way. 3 days after Admiral Clark's announcement, the news had spread to every human colony in space. The reactions were different on each world, but anger was everywhere. On the industrial planet of New Pittsburgh, Governor Bill Henderson called an emergency meeting. The planet's factories produced most of the metal tools and machine parts for human space. In the big meeting hall, workers and factory owners sat together, all worried about the same thing. If we give the Council 80% of what we make, Henderson said, we won't have enough left to keep our own people fed and housed. This isn't just unfair, it's impossible. An old factory worker named Tom raised his hand. Governor, what can we do? They have big warships, we just have cargo ships and mining equipment. Henderson looked around the room. We prepare. We start making things we might need if there's trouble, and we keep it secret from Council inspectors. Meanwhile, on the farming world of Green Valley, Administrator Kate Johnson was having a different kind of meeting. The planet grew food for dozens of human colonies. Without their crops, people would starve. Maybe we should just pay what they want, said one of the farmers. Fighting would be worse than being poor. But another farmer, an older woman named Susan, stood up. My grandfather came here 50 years ago. He cleared this land with his own hands. I'm not giving 70% of my crops to aliens who never worked a day on this soil. The room erupted in arguments. Some people wanted to fight, others wanted to give in. Johnson listened to both sides, but in her heart, she knew what humans were like. They would not stay quiet for long. Captain Jake Morrison and his crew had become messengers in a growing secret network. Agent Steve Murphy from Colonial Intelligence had contacted them with a special job. They needed to move people and supplies between human worlds without the Council knowing about it. It's dangerous work, Murphy told Jake during a secret meeting on Earth's orbital station. Council patrol ships are everywhere now. If they catch you carrying the wrong cargo, they'll arrest you. Jake looked at his crew. Lisa, Pete, and Amy all nodded. They were ready to take the risk. Their first secret mission was to carry Dr. Nathan Hughes from Earth to a hidden research station. Dr. Hughes looked like a normal scientist, but he was working on something that could change everything. In his bags were plans for new shield systems and better engines. I've been working on this for 5 years, Hughes told Jake as they flew through space. The Council doesn't know we have this technology. Our shields are stronger than anything they've ever seen. At the research station, Hughes worked with weapons expert Linda Parker to turn their defensive shields into something that could protect whole cities. They discovered that human engineering was far ahead of Council technology in many ways. But on Earth, things were getting worse. The Council's patience was running out. Seltharian Commander Zixthara had finished meeting with Dr. Ford, and the news was bad. Dr. Ford called Admiral Clark right after the meeting ended. Her face was tired and sad. They won't change their demands. Zixthara says humans have grown too fast and too strong. The Council wants to put us back in our place before we become a real threat to their power. Admiral Clark slammed his fist on his desk. What did you tell them? I asked for more time to consider their offer. But Clark, they're not really offering anything. They want to make us into servants. All across human space, the Council was making their power clear. Commander Vexkala of the Kythera Enforcement Fleet moved warships near human colonies. Neptari trade vessels stopped delivering medicine and equipment to human worlds. The economic pressure was immediate and painful. But humans began to adapt quickly. On colony worlds, people started growing their own food instead of importing it. Factory workers began making spare parts for their equipment. Scientists shared their knowledge in secret, preparing for whatever might come. The first real test came when Council forces tried to take control of Outpost 7, a small mining station. Station Commander Roy Fisher had only 30 people under his command, but they were not going to give up without a fight. Lieutenant Carol Davis led the station's small security team. When Caithra soldiers tried to board the station, they found humans who fought like nothing they had ever seen before. The aliens were used to enemies who followed the same old battle rules, but humans change their tactics every few minutes. They don't fight the way they're supposed to, one Caithra officer reported back to his ship. Every time we adapt to their strategy, they do something completely different. The humans use the station's maintenance tunnels to attack from unexpected directions. They turned off the artificial gravity in some sections to confuse the invaders. Carol Davis led her team through the station's hidden passages, hitting the enemy, and then disappearing before they could fight back. After 6 hours of fighting, the Caithra gave up and left. It was a small victory, but an important one. For the first time, Council forces had been defeated by humans. The news spread quickly through the secret communication network that Colonial Intelligence Director Frank Morgan had built. Agent Murphy and his team of spies made sure every human colony heard about the victory at Outpost 7. Admiral Clark made his decision that night. He called together the leaders of the human colonial defense and told them what they all already knew in by their hearts. "We're not giving in to their demands," he said. "If the Council wants a fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget." Secret mobilization began immediately. Hidden factories started making weapons instead of farming tools. Cargo ships were quietly modified to carry troops instead of trade goods. Scientists like Dr. Hughes worked around the clock to mass produce their new technologies. The Council thought they were dealing with a weak young species that would surrender quickly. They had no idea that humans had been preparing for this moment since the first day they entered space. Earth's people had always known that someday they might have to fight for their freedom. That day was coming very soon. 3 months had passed since the Council's ultimatum. The galaxy was tense like a rope pulled too tight. Then, without any warning, the rope snapped. The attack came at dawn on the human colony of New Haven. Ellen Wright, the colony's administrator, was drinking her morning coffee when the alarm started screaming. Through her office window, she could see bright flashes in the sky as Council warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. "All civilians to the emergency shelters," she announced over the colony's communication system. Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking. "This is not a drill. Move quickly, but do not panic." The attacking fleet was massive. 50 Zeltarian warships, their crystal hulls gleaming in the morning sun. They were led by Admiral Krexnoth, one of the Council's most experienced commanders. The alien had fought dozens of battles against rebels and pirates. He expected this to be just as easy, but New Haven was not defenseless. During the past 3 months, Chief Engineer Bobby Clark had been secretly installing new shield generators around the colony. They were based on Dr. Hughes's designs, built in hidden factories and smuggled in by ships like Jake Morrison's Liberty's Edge. When the first Council weapons hit the colony's shields, something unexpected happened. The energy beams bounced off like rain hitting a window. The shields held firm, protecting the buildings and people below. Admiral Krexnoth stared at his tactical screens in confusion. "Impossible," he said in his crystal-like voice. "Our weapons should have destroyed those shields easily. What technology are they using?" His second-in-command, a younger Zeltharian named Kextal, was checking the sensor readings. "Sir, the energy patterns are completely unknown. These shields are more advanced than anything in our databases." Down on the planet's surface, Clark was working frantically in the shield control center. Warning lights flashed all around him as the Council bombardment continued. But the shields were holding, just like Dr. Hughes had promised they would. "Keep those power levels steady," Clark shouted to his team. "We just need to hold out until help arrives." The Council's plan had been simple: bomb the colony from space until it surrendered, then land troops to occupy it. They wanted to make an example of New Haven to scare other human worlds into obeying, but the strong shields had ruined their strategy. Admiral Krexnoth decided to send in ground troops. If he could not destroy the colony from space, he would take it by force. Hundreds of Zeltharian and Kythera soldiers dropped from the sky in landing pods. But the humans on New Haven were ready for them too. Captain Tony. Lee led the colonial Marines who had been stationed on the planet. They were not professional soldiers like Earth's military, but they were tough miners and farmers who knew how to fight. The Council soldiers expected the humans to line up and fight in neat formations, like most species did. Instead, they found enemies who seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Sergeant Kimberly Stone led a squad of Marines through the colony's industrial area. They used the maze of pipes and machinery to hide from the enemy, striking quickly and then disappearing. The Council soldiers had never faced this kind of warfare before. "Where are they?" A frustrated Kythera officer buzzed to his troops. "Every time we corner them, they vanish like ghosts." The humans were using tactics they called guerrilla warfare. They had learned about it from studying Earth's history. Small groups of fighters could defeat larger armies if they were smart about when and where to attack. Danny Rodriguez, the colony's medic, moved through the battle helping wounded Marines. He had rigged up a mobile medical station in the back of a mining truck. When someone got hurt, he could patch them up quickly and get them back into the fight. The battle raged for hours. The Council forces had more soldiers and better weapons, but they could not pin down the humans. Every time they thought they had won a section of the colony, human fighters would pop up behind them and attack again. Then, just when Admiral Krexnoth thought his forces might finally be winning, new signals appeared on his sensors. Human ships were arriving. Captain Jake Morrison's Liberty's Edge led the relief fleet. The ship had been converted into a warship during the past few months, with new weapons and shields. Behind him came vessels commanded by Captain Alan Hughes and Captain Deborah Walsh, along with a dozen other human captains. The space battle was fierce but short. The Council ships were designed to fight enemies who used old-fashioned tactics. But the human ships moved like dancers, spinning and dodging, in ways that seemed impossible. "They're not following any known battle patterns," Admiral Krexnoth reported to Council headquarters. "They fight like they're making it up as they go along." That was exactly what the humans were doing. While the Council militaries had used the same strategies for hundreds of years, humans constantly adapted and improvised. Each human captain fought differently, making it impossible for the enemy to predict what would happen next. Captain Morrison used his ship's small size to dart between the larger Council vessels, hitting them where their shields were weakest. Captain Hughes coordinated his squadron to attack like a pack of wolves, surrounding single enemy ships and overwhelming them. Captain Walsh used her ship's speed to rescue damaged human vessels before the enemy could finish them off. Within 2 hours, the remaining Council ships were retreating. Admiral Krexnoth's fleet had lost 15 vessels and hundreds of soldiers. The humans had lost only 2 ships and fewer than 50 people. As the Council fleet limped away from New Haven, Admiral Krexnoth sent an emergency message to Council headquarters. "We have seriously underestimated the humans," he reported. "Their technology is more advanced than we thought. Their fighting methods are completely unpredictable, and their resolve is much stronger than our intelligence suggested." Back on New Haven, the colonists were celebrating. Ellen Wright stood in the colony's main square, watching as Marines and civilians worked together to repair the damage. The shields had protected most of the buildings, and the guerrilla tactics had kept human casualties low. "We did it," she said to Captain Lee. "We actually beat them." Lee nodded, but his expression was serious. This was just the first battle. They'll be back with more ships and better plans. But at least now they know we're not going to roll over and surrender. The news of New Haven's victory spread across human space faster than light-speed travel. Every colony, every ship, every human settlement heard the same message. The Council could be beaten, but the victory also had consequences. In Council space, the alien leaders were meeting in emergency session. For the first time in their history, their military superiority had been challenged. Some Council members were frightened, others were angry. But all of them now understood that this war would not be as easy as they had expected. The humans were not going to be quick victims. They were going to be dangerous enemies. After the defeat at New Haven, the council leaders were furious. They had expected to crush the humans quickly and get back to business as usual. Instead, they faced a war that was spreading across the galaxy. Supreme Admiral Thexquin, the highest military commander of the Zeltharians, was given control of the largest fleet in galactic history. 2,000 warships from 3 different species, all focused on one goal: destroy humanity before they became even more dangerous. "This time we attack everywhere at once," Thexquin announced to his fleet commanders. "The humans cannot defend all their colonies if we strike them all at the same time." But humanity had been preparing too. Admiral Clark had spent months developing a new kind of defense strategy. Instead of trying to protect every world with big fleets, he spread out smaller, faster ships that could move quickly to help wherever they were needed. Captain Greg Thompson commanded the warship Defiant, one of the new fast attack vessels. His ship was smaller than the Council's heavy warships, but it was much faster and more maneuverable. When Council forces attacked the mining colony of Red Rock, Thompson's ship arrived within hours to help. The battle at Red Rock showed how much human tactics had improved. Thompson's ship worked together with Captain Patricia Allen's Iron Will to confuse the attacking Kythera fleet. They used hit-and-run attacks, striking quickly and then disappearing before the enemy could respond. "It's like trying to catch smoke with your hands," complained Kythera Commander Vixathala after the humans escaped again. "Every time we think we have them cornered, they slip away." But the biggest change in the war came when Dr. Hughes completed his newest invention. Working in a secret laboratory, he had created a faster-than-light communication system that could send messages instantly across the galaxy. Communications Officer Lucy Bennett ran the first test of the new system. Sitting in a bunker on Earth, she was able to talk immediately with human colonies thousands of light-years away. The technology worked perfectly. "This changes everything," Admiral Clark said when he saw the demonstration. "Now we can coordinate our forces across the entire galaxy in real time. The Council can't do that. Their messages still take weeks or months to travel between their worlds." Technician Barry White and analyst Michelle Davis worked around the clock to install the new communication systems on human ships and colonies. Within weeks, every human military unit could talk to every other unit instantly. The new communication gave humanity a huge advantage. When the Council attacked one colony, nearby human ships could be called in immediately. When human scouts discovered Council fleet movements, the information reached all human commanders within minutes. But the war was causing problems for the Council that they had not expected. On Kythera worlds, ordinary citizens were starting to ask uncomfortable questions. "Why are our sons dying for the economic profits of the ruling families?" demanded a Kythera worker during a protest on the planet Hythera. "The humans never attacked us. We attacked them." The protest spread to other Kythera worlds. Many Kythera had never supported the war in the first place. They had been forced into it by their government, but now they were refusing to fight. On Neptari worlds, similar problems were developing. Young Neptari who had been drafted to fight were deserting from their military units. Some Neptari colonies were declaring themselves neutral and refusing to participate in the war. Humanity saw an opportunity in the Council's internal problems. Diplomatic envoy Catherine Moore began secretly meeting with moderate leaders from Council species. Her job was to encourage the growing peace movements on alien worlds. Intelligence operative Agent Roger Taylor had an even more dangerous mission. He worked with anti-war groups on Council planets, providing them with communication, equipment, and strategic advice. His operations were coordinated by State Department official Julia Anderson, who turned out to be surprisingly good at understanding alien politics. The first major breakthrough came when the Kythera home government voted to withdraw from active combat operations. Their new leader, a reformist named Clicthara, made a public announcement that shocked the galaxy. The Kythera Confederacy will no longer participate in this war of aggression against the human species, Clicthara declared. "We call upon our fellow Council members to seek a peaceful solution to this conflict." Supreme Admiral Thexquin was furious. "Cowards," he hissed in his crystal-like voice. "The Kythera have always been weak. The Zeltharians and Neptari will finish this war without them. But losing the Kythera meant losing 1/3 of the Council's military forces. Thexquin's grand strategy of attacking everywhere at once was no longer possible. He had to choose which human colonies to target. Meanwhile, human forces were getting stronger every day. The secret factories that had been hidden during the first months of the war were now working openly. New warships rolled out of construction yards on a dozen human worlds. Captain Morrison, now commanding a heavy cruiser called Liberty's Revenge, led training exercises for new human ship captains. The veterans of battles like New Haven and Red Rock shared their knowledge with fresh crews. Remember, Morrison told a group of new captains, "The Council expects us to fight like they do. Line up our ships, follow the rule book, and trade shots until someone gives up. Don't do that. Be creative. Be unpredictable. Make them react to you instead of the other way around." The human ships that came out of these training programs were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They fought with tactics borrowed from Earth's history, adapted for space warfare. They moved like schools of fish, flocks of birds, or packs of wolves. Captain Sharon Taylor developed a tactic called the spiral trap, where human ships would appear to retreat while actually leading the enemy into a carefully planned ambush. Captain Kevin Brown perfected the Ghost Squadron technique, where human ships would use electronic jamming to make one ship look like 5, or 5 ships look like 1. The psychological effect on Council forces was devastating. Their commanders never knew if they were facing a small patrol or a major fleet until it was too late. Their soldiers began to fear humans as unpredictable and dangerous opponents. On the Neptari homeworld, massive peace demonstrations filled the underwater cities. Millions of Neptari citizens demanded an end to the war. Their government was split between those who wanted to continue fighting and those who wanted to negotiate. "The humans fight for their survival," said Neptari peace leader Aquaneth during a broadcast that reached billions of citizens. "We fight for the profits of the powerful. Which side is right?" Supreme Admiral Thexquin found himself commanding a coalition that was falling apart. The Kythera had withdrawn. The Neptari were unreliable. Many smaller Council species were quietly switching sides or declaring neutrality. But Thexquin was not ready to give up. He began planning one final desperate assault. If he could destroy Earth itself, the human resistance would collapse. All he needed was enough ships for one last massive attack. As he prepared for this final battle, Thexquin did not realize that human intelligence had already learned about his plans. Agent Taylor's network had intercepted the communications between Council fleet commanders. Admiral Clark read the intelligence report with a grim smile. "He's going to try to attack Earth with everything he has left. This could be our chance to end the war once and for all." The stage was set for the final confrontation. The Council's remaining forces would make one last attempt to destroy humanity's homeworld. But they would find Earth defended by humans who had learned how to turn their greatest weaknesses into their greatest strengths. Supreme Admiral Thexquin assembled the largest attack fleet in galactic history for what he called the final solution. Over 2,000 warships, mostly Zeltharian and Neptari vessels, prepared to jump to Earth's solar system. The plan was simple: destroy humanity's homeworld and end the war in one massive strike. "Today we finish what we started," Thexquin announced to his fleet commanders. "The humans have caused enough trouble. After we destroy Earth, the remaining human colonies will surrender quickly." But Earth was not defenseless. Admiral Clark had spent months preparing for exactly this kind of attack. From his command center on Guardian Station, the massive orbital fortress above Earth, he coordinated the most sophisticated defense network ever created. Commander Wayne Phillips ran the day-to-day operations of Guardian Station. His crew included Tactical Officer Lisa Morgan, who tracked every ship movement in the solar system, and Defense Coordinator Paul Jackson, who managed the hundreds of weapon platforms scattered throughout Earth's space. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of the system," Morgan reported. "It looks like they're bringing everything they have." Admiral Clark nodded grimly. "Signal all ships. This is what we've been preparing for." The human Defense Fleet was smaller than the attacking Council force, but it was made up of veterans who had been fighting this war from the beginning. Captain Morrison commanded Liberty's Revenge, leading a squadron that included ships captained by Sharon Taylor and Kevin Brown. When the Council fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel, they expected to find Earth lightly defended. Instead, they faced a defense network unlike anything they had ever encountered. The first surprise came when Council ships tried to approach Earth. Instead of meeting them in space with traditional ship-to-ship combat, the humans activated a planet-wide shield system that completely surrounded Earth like a giant soap bubble. Dr. Hughes had been working on this system for months. The planetary shield was his masterpiece, combining all the defensive technology humanity had developed during the war. Chief Science Officer Miranda Wright coordinated the shield operations from a control center deep underground. "Impossible," Supreme Admiral Thexquin said as he watched his fleet's weapons bounce harmlessly off the planetary shield. No technology should be able to protect an entire planet. But the shield was just the beginning. As the Council fleet moved closer to Earth, they found themselves facing defensive tactics they had never imagined. Human ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts, using the shadow of Earth's moon and the radiation of the sun to hide their movements. Captain Morrison led his squadron in a flanking attack that caught the Council fleet completely by surprise. Instead of attacking from the front like traditional space battles, the human ships came from above and below, hitting the enemy formation where it was weakest. "They're not fighting like any military doctrine we know," reported a confused Neptari commander to Thexquin. "They attack from every direction at once, then vanish before we can respond." The human ships moved like they were performing a deadly dance. Captain Taylor's vessel spiraled through the enemy formation, firing precise shots at critical ship systems. Captain Brown's ship led a group that attacked like a pack of wolves, isolating single enemy vessels and overwhelming them with coordinated strikes. But the real turning point came when human ground forces launched their own surprise attack. General Richard Stone had been secretly preparing liberation forces for months. As the space battle raged above Earth, human ships jumped to Council worlds that had been left defenseless. Marines under Colonel Angela Foster landed on Zeltharian mining worlds and freed the slave workers who had been forced to work in the crystal mines. Colonel Joseph Davis led liberation forces to Neptari agricultural planets, where they found workers living in terrible conditions. The freed workers joined the human forces immediately. They had been waiting for someone to help them escape from the Council's oppression. Within hours, revolution was spreading across Council space. "Sir," came a panicked report to Supreme Admiral Thexquin. "We're receiving distress calls from our home worlds. Human forces are liberating our worker populations. The freed slaves are joining them and attacking our remaining bases." Thexquin realized his fleet was trapped. If he continued the attack on Earth, his home worlds would fall to revolution. If he returned to defend Council space, Earth's forces would follow him and make things even worse. But Dr. Hughes was not finished yet. From his underground laboratory, he activated the final surprise he had been preparing. The planetary shield system suddenly expanded, creating a massive energy pulse that disabled every Council ship within 1,000,000 kilometers of Earth. Council Science Officer Nexqual, monitoring from one of the few ships that escaped the pulse, could barely believe his sensor readings. "The energy output is beyond our understanding. Their technology is hundreds of years ahead of ours." With their main fleet disabled, the remaining Council forces had no choice but to surrender. Supreme Admiral Thexquin's flagship was captured intact, along with most of his command staff. But the victory at Earth was just the beginning of the Council's collapse. The liberation of workers on Council worlds had triggered a galaxy-wide revolution. Species after species declared independence from Council rule. The Kithara, who had already withdrawn from the war, announced they were forming a democratic government. The Neptari home government fell to a peaceful revolution, led by moderate politicians who wanted to end the war immediately. Even on Zeltharian worlds, the crystal-like beings were overthrowing their old rulers and electing new leaders who promised equality and freedom. The war ended not with humanity conquering the Council, but with the complete collapse of the Council system itself. The old empire of oppression and greed crumbled as billions of beings chose freedom over slavery. 6 months later, Captain Morrison attended the first meeting of the new Galactic Assembly. The meeting was held on a neutral world, with representatives from dozens of species that had once been part of the council. Dr. Rachel Ford, Earth's chief diplomat, had proposed the assembly as a democratic alternative to the old council system. Instead of being ruled by powerful species, each world would have an equal voice in galactic government. The old council failed because it was based on fear and greed, Dr. Ford told the assembly. This new government will succeed because it is based on cooperation and respect. The assembly's first act was to officially end the war and begin rebuilding the worlds that had been damaged by the fighting. Dr. Hughes led a team of scientists from many species, working together to develop technology that would help heal the galaxy. His team included engineers like Gary Miller and scientist Helen Rodriguez, but also Kithera bioengineers and Neptari environmental specialists. They focused on peaceful technology, better farming methods, cleaner energy sources, and medical advances that would help all species. Admiral Clark, now promoted to head of the new galactic peacekeeping force, reflected on how the war had changed everything. "We never wanted to conquer anyone," he told a reporter. "We just wanted to be free to live our own lives and build our own future." The final scene of the war came when Supreme Admiral Thexquin was put on trial for war crimes. But instead of execution or imprisonment, the new Galactic Assembly chose a different punishment. Thexquin was sentenced to spend 10 years working in the rebuilding efforts on worlds that had been damaged by the war. "The old way was revenge and punishment," explained the Assembly's first president, a former Kithera slave named Frikala. "The new way is redemption and healing." As the first year of peace ended, humans found themselves in a strange position. They had become the most respected species in the galaxy, not because they had conquered their enemies, but because they had freed them. Children on dozens of worlds learned about the human values that had sparked the revolution, the belief that all beings deserved freedom, the idea that technology should help people instead of oppressing them, and the conviction that no one should be forced to live as a slave. The war that had begun with the Council's greed had ended with the birth of a truly free galactic civilization. Humanity had not just won their own freedom. They had accidentally freed half the galaxy. And in the end, that was the most human thing of all, fighting not just for themselves but for everyone who needed help.